tea in here, grab the kitchen, and it's going to be a brew day today. Nice and early, 7 a.m. So yeah, we're going to be brewing a best bitter today. I'll show you how we go about that. So stay tuned, bed in, and hope you enjoy. An attempt to record my brew day today. So do bear with me if there's bits missing, as it is my first attempt to try and capture the whole thing. And today we are going to be brewing up a batch of our house best bitter called the Cup, named after the venue that the pub is situated in. And as you can see, this is the brew kit here at the back, 3-vessel brew kit there, HLT, first vessel, mash tun in the middle. Not the most efficient mash tun, as you can see, it's taller than it is wider, but we make some pretty good beers out of there, and the fly sparge system is non-existent, so we do batch sparging, but I found I've got a little bit more efficiency actually, strangely doing it that way, just a bit more laborious, needing to rehook up and unhook hoses throughout the brew day, and especially if I'm entertaining and doing one of our wonderful brewery experience days, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. It can get a little bit long-winded, and then naturally along there the copper boil kettle. They're all controlled by this control panel here, electric elements, and it's an infusion mash tun. So today we're brewing the best bitter with a simple grist of pale ale malt. Yes, you could use something like Maris Otter, but as we are commercially brewing, we are looking to sort of bring that batch cost down, especially as times have been quite hard recently. Also going in there is a touch of chit malt, because I want to up the body of the beer, but I still only want to mash at 66 degrees. So that's going to able that, and it's going to also help me get really good head retention. This is a cask ale naturally, and 12.5 kilos there of crystal medium, all from beds, all through Brewers Select. I try to use full bags and half bags where possible, beer dependent. It just makes life that little bit easier. I'll try and capture as much footage throughout the day, talk to you a little bit more about the recipe as we go through. But if there is bits missing, I do apologise, and then hopefully as time goes on, we'll get a little bit smoother and better at recording things. As I say, this is just on my phone, got no tripods or any fancy equipment at the moment. But I hope you enjoy, and I hope it goes well. So I've just got the HLT on a recirc at the moment, just to get an even temperature across the entire volume of liquor. And also treated it last night with some AMS to bring that pH down, and that's now all ready to go. We're looking at 77 degrees today. It's a little bit of a guess based on the ambient temperature, of the grain and the environment and the room and the stainless steel in the mash tun. Now there is a calculation you can do, and I'll probably throw that and show that in another video, as I'm not attempting that today, as I have been brewing quite recently, and things tend to stay pretty stable for a couple of weeks. When seasons change, that's really when you notice big differences in the temperature of your mash. I'll run you through some of the other ingredients that we've got going on today. We've got our minerals here, so calcium chloride, calcium sulfate, 2 charges, one going in the mash and one going into the boil, and we're looking for a ppm of around about 185 plus for a cask ale. High calcium is going to aid mash efficiency and allow those enzymes to do their thing. It's also going to aid the finings down the line and help get this beer nice and clear. A little bit of anti-foam for the kettle later on, so that we don't have a boil over. And our hops today, we've got our bittering hop here, and today I'm using Magnum, 320 grams, and that's going to go in as a first wort addition. And then a kilo of Bramlin Cross and your Proflox tablets there, and that's going to go in just towards the end of the boil. And then the yeast today, I'm going to be using ale and lager fermentation. It's nice and cheap, about £22 per batch, £44 per brick, as we're always watching the pennies. But did a brew with that yeast last week, and the attenuation is a little bit lower than I expected, so made some adjustments for today's batch, and hopefully we'll get a little bit closer to where we are. We are within specification, but just hopefully tighten things up a little bit, as it's a new yeast to me and haven't really used it too much. So I brewed to a batch volume of roughly around about 440 to 450 to try and achieve a package volume of anywhere between 390 and 400. Again, it's very much dependent on the ABV of the beer and what the kit can handle. You know, this is a 4% beer, so it's pretty good on this kit. But you know, something like my American IPA, 6%, the kit does seem to struggle in terms of yield, and then often or not, I've found the trick is to go with a bit of simple sugar. Feels a bit wrong, but you know, it's very much about yield and maximising the profitability of the batches of beer that we produce here. But today, nice and simple, 4%. We will be doing a liquor back as well into the tank, because the FVs can hold more than the kit will produce, but also it allows me to control that original gravity and make sure that, you know, all my numbers are on point. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just transfer the hoses now to start transferring the liquor into the mash tun. I'm going to give it a good mix. As I am on my own, I tend to throw in what we call a shock layer of liquor to the bottom, but about 50 litres, just above the false bottom of the mash tun, and then start throwing in the grist, start giving it a good mix, and build up to roughly 200 litres of water, liquor in the mash tun, dependent. I'll try and hold back just a touch in case I need to cool it down. Naturally, I'd like to, you know, it's much easier for me if it's a little bit hotter than desired, because I can bring it down, but bringing it up to temperature can be a little bit more tricky. So yeah, what we'll do is I'll set the camera to one side and get a little bit of reel of me mashing in. There we go, 65.6, 55 point, that's going down a bit there, probably give it a bit more of a mix there. 65.7, and that's good enough for me. You know, as I say, I can't get a full representation of the temperature across the mash tun, but if we're close to the desired temp of 66, that's good enough for me. You say most of the conversion will take place within the first 15 minutes, so it's quite important that, you know, we get it mixed, get it to the temperature that we need pretty quick, and make sure that there's no dough balls, lumps or clumps. That looks pretty good to me, so we'll move on to the next bit. So yeah, we're about 45 minutes now into the mash, and for the last 15 minutes or so, I'm going to start the ball off. And we do this just within the infusion mash tun itself, and just recirculate from the bottom out the top. I've got this trusty little bit of tin foil there that I'm just going to position in very homebrew-like, just to displace the wort as it transfers through, and hopefully the grain bed will settle nicely and nice and evenly, and we'll be able to get a nice clean wort. As I say, I'm batch sparging, so then we'll transfer the entire wort from the mash tun into the copper, refill the mash tun, give it another mix, let it settle, another boil off, and we'll do that about twice on this particular brew. If it was a bigger beer, bigger ABV, possibly do it a third time. But I found with the 4% beers, 2 batches of the sparge is sufficient enough to extract enough sugar minus any unwanted tannins and so forth. So what I'll do is I'll just re-hook the hoses from the HLT onto the mash tun, and then get that underway. Right, folks, so the mash is completed. Just going to grab a little sample of the wort there just to have a look at it. You know, it's not the clearest. I could keep going and going and going and going and going to try and get it clearer than that. But, you know, on this kit, that's pretty much as good as it gets. We don't have any underbacks or any additional aids into improving the roll off. But we end up with some really good results at the end of the process, and once it's in the glass. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is set up to transfer that first portion of wort into the copper, add some additional minerals, so some more gypsum, some more chloride to aid clarification in the cask, and also a little bit of the anti-foam to stabilise things in the kettle and avoid a boil over later on. So I'm going to do that now and be back soon. Right, so yeah, we'll transfer that first portion of wort into the copper, and then we'll be back to start the first round of the batch sparge, which will be a case of adding roughly about 150 litres of liquor into the mash tun, giving it a good mix, allowing the grain bed to naturally settle, doing another boil off. Doesn't generally seem to take as long as the first initial one. Then transfer that through. Once we're above the heating elements in the copper, we'll turn them on to start bringing the wort up to the boil. A process that you might not be familiar with on a homebrew scale, and something that we do, and it's not been a thing that we've done forever. It's a relatively recent change within the last 12 months, is we actually only boil our wort for half an hour. You know, it has meant that we had to adjust our recipe slightly. Reason being energy costs, but what we have found out that you know, hop utilisation in terms of bittering hops, isomerization starts to occur at roughly around about 90 degrees. So when we hit 90 degrees, we set a timer. We set a timer for 30 minutes. We allow those hops to stand in the wort for those 30 minutes before it boils. If it comes up to the boil we'll just turn the boil off, wait for that timer to run out, and then bring it back to the boil. So the whole duration that bittering hop has had contact with the wort and is going through the process of isomerization, still remains at 60 minutes. It just means that we don't have to have our elements ticking over for the full duration. And then boil for half an hour, as naturally what we're trying to do is get a good vigorous boil to sterilise or to sanitise the wort, reduce in volume, not as much as if you would for the hour, and boil off any unsavoury volatiles. But again, and you're probably familiar with modern ingredients are really pretty robust, and you don't really find that you get too much sulfur precursors or off flavours lurking around. So we found for us that it works pretty well. And again, it absolutely saves a fortune on energy. So we'll be back to pick up the next stage shortly. Thank you very much. So right, the first portion of wort, the strongest stuff, is now transferred into the copper, and we're now going to reposition the hoses. A little bit of a ball ache, if I'm honest, but we're going to reposition them back to the HLT, to the mash tun, go with half of that sparge water back into the mash tun, give it a good old mix, let that settle again, boil off for about another 10 minutes, and then transfer that second portion through. Do it a third time, and then we'll have our copper full of lovely wort, and hopefully on the way to 90 degrees and up to the boil. So I'm just going to position the camera and grab some footage of the process, and see you in a bit. So give it a good mix now. And then we'll just let that set for another 10 minutes and a boil off for 10 minutes, so 20 minutes in total, and then we'll get that back into the copper, and then we will, not back in, but in for the first time, and then that will be 2/3 of the way, and then the final third we'll do exactly the same again until we've got the nice full copper onto a rolling boil. Right, we're on to the second boil off now of the second portion of sparge. We'll run this for 10 minutes until it's nice and clear, and then transfer that through to the kettle, and then set up again for the final third, and then move on to bringing that wort to the boil. So now my wort temperature is down to the calibrated temperature of the pH reader. Just doing a reading from the mash that was taken 15 minutes after the mash had started, and we got a 5.4 pH. I was aiming a bit lower, but hopefully that will be absolutely sufficient, as it's within the ballpark figure. So yeah, that second boil off has taken place, and I'm happy with the results on that one. So I'm just going to again reattach this hose to the copper, and then bring that portion of wort over to the kettle, by which point we'll be full enough to attach, to turn on the heat elements to start bringing it up to boil. So we've fully transferred now into the kettle and we are just bringing it up to the boil. It's above 90 degrees, so I've set the timer up for 30 minutes. If it gets up to the boil before the 30 minutes has run out, I'll just turn it off for a couple of minutes. And now we're going to empty the mash tun once it's fully drained back into the bags, and that's all going to go to our local farmer as animal feed. So I'll put a little time lapse of that process taking place. And then once we're up to the boil, we'll move on to our hop additions and also some of our readings as well. So yeah, stay tuned and see you in a bit. The copper's nearly up to boil, but we were about 7 minutes off for that half an hour of isomerization. So I've just turned off the elements until that time runs out, and then we will kick it back in and get it back up to boil. In the meantime, we're just waiting for most of the water to drain from the mash tun. No point shoveling out lots of wet grist into the bags and carrying that extra weight for the farmer. And I'm limited on the bags that I have. Pretty much what I use is what I've got to refill. So we're just going to let that drain. I try to get this done before we start the transfer, because when I come to washing down the mash tun, all the water pressure gets sucked out of the pub for the transfer when I'm condensing the steam. Not condensing the steam, but when I'm using the plate chiller to cool down the wort to the transfer. So hopefully I'll be able to get this out. If not, it's not too much of a trouble. I could do it afterwards, but I'd normally like to get it done before. So folks, yeah, been a bit of a gap in footage there. We're now up to the boil. We've had the half an hour hop stand for the bittering hops. We're into the half an hour boil now. 23 minutes left on there. Just going to prep the fermenter now with some Perox, which is hydrogen peroxide, rinse-free based sanitizer, non-foaming, like you're probably used to in the homebrew world. But then we're going to flush the, using the CIP, the spray ball, we're going to rinse the inside of the FV, push it all the way through the plate chiller as well, ready to transfer the wort over to the FV. So if I can, I'll pop the camera somewhere where you can see me do that, but there's very limited spaces here, and the FV in this occasion is a little bit awkward, but we'll see what we can do. Catch up with you in a bit. Take care, bye. Alright then, so we've got that on a CIP there, so coming out the bottom through the pump, back up the long hose to a spray ball with our 0.1% concentrated peroxide, and then after that we will flush through the heat exchanger on the end, back flush it, so the opposite way to how we will transfer the wort, and then that will all be ready for when we need to transfer the wort over to the FV. Coming up soon will be our last hop addition of the 1 kilos of Bramlin Cross, and we'll catch up then. Right, so 5 minutes towards the end of the boil, we are now ready to add in our Bramlin Cross hops there and the Proflop tablets. So I'm just going to shoot over to the kettle. I'm going to knock off the heated element prior to that, just to avoid any potential disasters and boil overs. And then we're just going to pop the lid open, and we're going to, get the right angle. We're going to pop the lid open and then pour in the aroma addition, and that's gone straight in there. And then that will just take 5 minutes. 5 minutes to boil now. And by the time that's transferred through by the plate chiller, we'll have that lovely infusion of the classic English hops. So just going to close this lid off. Very difficult to do with one hand, but we'll give it a go. There we go. Got it with one hand. Absolutely spot on. There we go. So just closing the lid off there. Just the late additions can be pretty volatile and potentially blow the lid off. The anti-foam sort of stops that, but just precautionary on the last one. We don't want to make any mess now at this stage. So now we've got the work coming out of the copper there, just on that side port, coming through the pump into the heat exchanger, coming out the other side and cooling that down to roughly 20 degrees into the fermenter just there through the racking arm. And then once we can get a sample from the tap, we will check our initial gravity, but we are looking for a dilution of a minimum of around about 70 litres to ideally fill the tank nice and full. So we'll come back and we will check that shortly. Right there guys, I'm just doing the liquor back now. So we've got a hose pipe with a flow meter on, and we are going to be adding just shy of 70 litres of water into the boil kettle. Unfortunately, I can't do this in transition because it kills the water pressure and I can't cool the work down enough. So I have to stop the transfer once I've got enough room in the kettle and enough wort in the fermenter to take a representative sample, and then as soon as we get close to the 70 litres, I can start up the transfer again and let the last bit trickle through. It's just a quirk of our system here, but what we are looking for is to bring it down from 1049 to 1036. And then we'll end up with the correct starting OG, and then we should end up with the correct final gravity. And all of our core beers do go off for sampling twice a year to Brew Lab, where we get an analysis. Hard to say that. An analysis of the product, where they can tell us our OG, our FG, our ABV, and if you want to, they can also look into EBC and IBUs as well. But we only really focus on the legal requirements. And as I said, it's 0.5% legally on the specification. We operate with 0.3 just to try and keep it a little bit tighter. If we ever fall out of that, you know, what we'll need to do is sell these beers as specials, brewers' choices, guest choices, rebrand it, so therefore it's been sold at the correct specification. Very rarely happens because, you know, we try and make sure that we're hitting our numbers throughout the day and achieving the goal at hand. A lot of these beers are brewed regularly, so they become a bit more natural. This one today, unfortunately, I am using a different yeast, so hopefully based off the previous brew, I've got some idea about how this yeast is going to perform, and we should end up within the specification. Right, so it's been a little while since you last saw me, and that's because I absolutely ballsed up and calculated my grist wrong, and somehow I ended up with an extra 10 kilos of pale ale malt, which gave me a gravity, an OG of 1052, where we were looking for something in the region of 1036. Complications, dilution factor was asking for 177 litres. If I was to dilute that wort with 177 litres, that will overflow my FV. So now I'm on a path of carefully, unfortunately, dropping some wort out the FV as it transfers until I hit the OG that I need. We're pumping it through the racking arm, so we get some good turbulence, so I should get a decent representative sample. So I should know where I am, but it's just a fine line between making sure the tank's full, not wasting the brew day, just because of 10 kilos of barley that I shouldn't have added. So that's why I've not been filming as much. Hopefully on the next brew day will be a little bit more smoother, and should be able to film a little bit more of the intricacies of what we do. But I'll get back to you once I've achieved a full tank at the correct original gravity. Yeah, just took a last reading for the OG. Was a little bit tricky there, having ballsed up, but we got it down to 1036. You know, the recipe suggested it needed to come down to 1040. That would have produced a 4.3% beer, as long as obviously fermentation behaves the way we expect it to. So I've dropped it down to 1036, and that should bring us just slightly below 4%, but with secondary fermentation in the cask, that should allow for any discrepancies there, and will be well within specification. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Now it's just onto the clean down, the breakdown of the equipment, and then prepare myself for brewing and doing a brew experience day for 12 tomorrow. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the brew experience days a little bit later, and what they entail. But yeah, got 12 on tomorrow, so that's going to be a fun one. Yeah, so right there we've fully transferred through into the fermenter. Got a nice full tank, and the OG is at 1036, and we are going to pitch our Lallemand ale and lager yeast. Now I'm using this because it's cheap. It's £22 per batch, so £44 for a brick, but we are still deciding whether or not it's a worthwhile option. So a couple more brews and we will know whether or not we get the results that we want. I am looking at WHC labs as well, but that's a long road till we get there. But they are doing some fantastic yeast. But at the moment we're stuck with Lallemand or Fermentis yeasts, pretty much the two big ones out there. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I am just dry pitching this yeast. Lallemand now these days recommend to dry pitch over rehydration. There is no feasible benefits of rehydration according to Lallemand. Maybe a little bit of lag, but other than that, you end up with the same finished product. So we're going to crack this open, put half into the fermenter, and then seal up the bag for tomorrow's brew. As I like to keep them, as I like to use my yeast up pretty quick. And then we will start taking readings as fermentation takes place. Okay there, so this is our brew father showing the recipe for the best bitter, and as mentioned earlier before, there was a few issues on the brew day itself where I calculated the grist slightly wrong, including an extra 10 kilos of pale malt. So as it came to the dilution, the liquor back stage of the brew day, and probably why I stopped filming because I needed to get it correct, we were looking for a dilution of 70 litres, but as you'll see on this screen grab of Brewfather there, that I ended up with 160 litres with an OG of 1036 as opposed to 1044, which the initial recipe was calling for, but that would have resulted in a 4.3% beer, which would have still been in specification, but if during secondary fermentation it pushed itself over the 0.5 leeway, we would have had to sell it as a different beer. But by spotting that when I did, it allowed me to dilute the work down and bring that down to 1036, and we have a finishing gravity now, as this is a few days later, of 1007, which is about 3.8, but with secondary fermentation we should get close to that 4% ABV mark. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge to record and brew at the same time. I'm sure it will get a little bit easier as time goes on. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Very high class. Yeah. He'll throw it back. Throw it back. Oh, he'll throw it back. But then you said you want to have a beer, so he was like, well, it's not.